Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Contact Lost, our mini-series Round Zero pairings. Today, we've got our wonderful co-host Nathan, all the way from Stats Check.
Hello.
It's Stat Check, not Stats Check, isn't it?
I wasn't going to correct you. Adam
It's like
Camilleri of Art of War Down Under has said it incorrectly for the entire time that we've known him.
okay,
Um, so
because the S
it's
just
okay.
comes naturally at the end because you should be checking multiple stats, not like one stat.
No, it's just one stat. We only check one stat, and that's it.
Okay, right.
Yeah.
Well, you do you. Anyway, more importantly, however, we've got Ivan from Team South Korea on today. Hello there.
Oh, happy to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, pleasure to have you on. We always love some new faces at the WTC. So, before we go straight into it, I need to thank our sponsors, Weyland-Yutani and the Army Painter, as well as our wonderful community of Patreons, without whom we would not be running this show any longer. So now, Ivan, why come to the WTC? Fly all the way across the globe to play some plastic dollies? What happened?
Oh man, so this has been a long time dream come true, a long time goal of ours from the very get-go. I don't know if you know Suhan. He's the one of the co-captains for the team. He was unfortunately unable to make it this year, but he and I have been talking for several years now. And as of 2 years ago in 2022, we decided to create a pipeline or road to war, essentially to get South Korea on the map and get us to WTC. Um, WTC for everyone, it's like the most renowned team tournament, especially at the 8-man level, but international tournament that you could go to on the Warhammer in the Warhammer game, and it's such an epic scale. It's kind of like this, World Cup of
Hmm.
football, and to be able to attend that, it's like pretty much a lot of competitive players' goals. So we thought it would be an amazing opportunity to not only represent, our ethnic background, but to also showcase a Asian country that's never been there before. So it's been a huge endeavor, but also a huge goal of each of our team members to try and attend.
Okay,
So
and yeah, go on, Nathan.
was going to say, on that note, why don't you talk a little bit about how you picked your team members then kind of to go? And did you start with a charter or anything like that? Or are you kind of seeing who can go and who can pay? Or what's the process there for selecting team members this year?
So I think I was a little optimistic. I was talking to Sue, and so he's in Korea right now, and I'm in the States. So I live in the East Coast, Virginia, and we decided to kind of not really emulate the American style for their charter. We don't really have like an official charter, but what we did was divide the essentially the 8-man team into two halves. So he would take the Korea personnel or people living in Korea, and I would take the people in the US. And I already had several people in mind that I thought were willing to go and had, the logistical support to go, who were Korean American. And I was like, oh, that's perfect. Let's just combine forces and we'll meet kind of in the center in Belgium. You come from the east and I'll come from the west. And we'll pretty much combine two 4-man teams together essentially. And we're
Hmm.
like, all right, 2 years, that's plenty of time. It shouldn't matter financially because by then I would hope that people who are ecstatic to go would have saved enough money in 2 years to attend. So logistically, we're like, that shouldn't be an issue. No big deal. We'll just choose who we want to go, who wants to attend, who's pretty competitive, and let's go from there. Uh, and it was all fine and dandy until I realized a year later, the same people did not have my same mindset of saving or whatnot. So we started losing people along the way and trying to replace them as we went. So it ended up shuffling into who could attend, both logistically and by intent, and it ended up being the final 8 or 9 people who were able to go. So actually, to
Okay.
add on to that, it was interesting and pretty fortunate. So we have a lot of pro tabletop coaches, and actually one of our mercenary players is Thomas Bird from Pro Tabletop as well. It was coincidental because I asked Thomas to be one of our mercenary players because before the newest update, it was 5 national players and 3 mercenary players. So we had several mercenary players kind of as a backup because I knew on the American side, people are probably more ecstatic, which is interesting to know. People are more ecstatic on the Warhammer side on Americans to attend than people in Korea. And I that was a backwards thought because in Korea, esports is a really big thing. They're one of the top countries in any type of metagaming. So I thought, Warhammer, it's a growing popularity. There must be a decent population there, and there is a growing population of Warhammer players. But they didn't have the same really mindset that a lot of American players do, and it's probably because of the history of the game in the U.S. So I knew if I had a kind of a backup lineup of mercenary players, they could probably attend if all my national players didn't end up going. And since 2 years ago, I've had literally a full shift of lineup of my national players, all dropped off my initial crew, and they're now replaced by 5 nationals who I found again as replacement players in the U.S. And then a couple in Korea, and then some mercenary players to fill. So Pro Tabletop has been a pretty great partner in being our coaches and helping us with list building and running through our scrims with us on TTS. So it ended up being a very discombobulated way of building a team, despite my very meticulous intent on creating a team. But such is life. Yeah.
The best of plans always always fall apart. What kind of are you going to take then looking into next year? I assume that you'll want to come back. Everybody who goes to WTC once always wants to come back. What will you take from this lesson, setting up this first team, into the next team then?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think really honing in and trying to get as many national players as possible who are interested and really showcase not only our methodology, but how we do and our progress throughout this current one, and really highlight like, hey, this is such a great experience. Like being able to attend at the international level is one thing. Being a national player, that's great. Let's keep this going. Try to break seed every year and have a really positive outreach for our Korea community. That way, we don't really have, hopefully, the same blunders we have had when it comes to some of the recruiting and team building that we had for the past year or so. And really, for the current players, is hopefully, they could bring back their expertise, however many decide to return, and try to attend next year. So that way they could bring their experiences that they learned from this year and give that positive spin that WTC is worth, financially saving up for. And it is ultimately a huge burden on some people for logistical sense, but to showcase that it's worth it, and you get to meet some amazing players and people, especially like the TOs and organizers of this who do this out of their own pocket and time. It's like a big endeavor. So making sure that people understand that and show that this is a great event, it's worth coming to, and hopefully that's enough for people to be motivated to come next year. That's really.
Yeah, this is a great story so far, and we will come back to that. But turns out you won't be here on your own today because we've got Tony coming in.
Sorry, fashionably late. We had a slight issue technology-wise.
Is it? There's an English exit, right? Not exactly an English entrance, as far as the saying goes.
Oh, wow. The trash talk starts early, apparently, Tony.
Oh, there's always a place for trash talk here.
So introduce our guest, Joker. Don't just
throw
shade at
hello,
him.
Tony, captain of Team England. Good to have you on.
Thanks for having me on, guys. Sorry, we had a technical issue where I couldn't get my webcam and mic to work, so I'm on the iPhone is the solution.
That's fine.
Where there's a will, there's a way.
Exactly. Right, so we're gonna ask you a question right off the bat then about last year's event. How did it go? Were you satisfied with the result, and did you have any immediate takeaways?
We were sad not to make it to a podium place. I think we came really close. We had a lot of rounds in our hands last year, and we played a stream of. We had 7 great rounds, but we played a stream of what you consider the top tier teams, and we had draws where we were on the winning side of a draw, just couldn't get ourselves over the line. And I think that the reason we look back into that post event, the reason we had that issue was we didn't quite get the right practice and the right people and the right lists. Even though we tried, we did our very best. With the addition change, we just didn't quite get there. I was coaching last year, and it was interesting to watch from the outside. That's the first time I've coached with WTC and not played, and we just, we've had to look at that really closely this year and go, right, how do we avoid those pitfalls? Because I think we had the right lists, but our matrix was wrong. I think we hadn't maybe spend the time getting the reps in to go, I definitely know that I get this score out of this list, rather than going, I think I'm going to get a 15, a 12, a 10, or whatever it's going to be. And sometimes people would, it sounds bad, but people were too cautious, which meant that we took risks somewhere else. Whereas actually, if they had been more confident in the list, they could have got themselves over the line, and we as a team would have done better. So I think we were disappointed. We were really pleased that we were there playing Poland in the final round with a chance to get a podium place, of course, even be in the top spot. But I think that was almost out of our hands a bit because we had a couple of draws along the way, and our draws and our losses were just hard to take. I think in terms of where we aimed for at the start of the year. And I think how we'd planned when lists came out, and how we felt quite good at that point. But I think that the honest answer is there's lots of areas where we could have improved as a team. We could have done a bit more prep. So we have doubled down on that this year. I think we've already done more prep now in terms of games and game time than we had before this submission last year. And I think that will be telling, hopefully, when we get to the event.
Right, hopefully. And how did team selection then look like this year? What was the process? How many candidates did you have?
This was so we had, at one point, we had 52 people who were applying for the team, and we had to cut that down in sequential stages. And, some of the people would drop out initially because of time or realization that what we want to see in terms of like games and tournaments and team events, they just can't commit to. We did gradually whittle it down over the course of the year. We picked quite early 2 players, Manny Chima, who'd been made the world champion of Warhammer, Vic VJ, who was probably the standout player for the team last year, and had on the back of a couple of UK big event wins. We went with them early, and that left 6 places for still quite a big group of players. And then we really drove them out of lots of team events, both in the UK and abroad, to try and see what they're like in a group setting. But I would say, even at Home Nations, which is an event that is England, Ireland, Scotland, Wales, Northern Ireland, Belgium, and then usually 2 additional nations, we were still, and that was the kind of middle of April, we were still testing out players. So we really did drag that selection out right the way through. It's really, really difficult, and giving people feedback as part of that process has been really good. But it just, in this case, we thought that this person on this faction was maybe going to edge it, and we also had to hedge our bets a little bit because we don't, despite what you might read on Discord, we don't really have anybody in the team who's a playtester who has ready access of things that are coming or knows what's happening. So we had to pick players who will have 2 or 3 armies, both physically own them and have the experience of playing them, to try and hedge our bets in all of those areas. So I'm really pleased with the 8 we've got in the end, and we've not only that, but we've brought a real solid team of coaches, of players who had, who came really close to getting a place in the team this year, and the atmosphere has been really great. We've taken more players and more varied teams to events this year than ever before. I'm hoping we can keep that up, but I think it's hard when you have so many players, because you don't want it to be the term we hear in England a lot is the of a boys club, where it's kind of like the same 8 guys go every year. We don't really have that. This year we've picked 2 new players, and so every year now that I've been involved in the team, we've taken at least 1 new player. We had 2 new players last year. We've got 2 more new players this year, and I think that just keeps the team fresh, and people on the outside can see it isn't impossible to get in. Come along, get involved with the team, and you get to meet us. And if you show that you're good enough, there's a chance you can get into the team.
Nice. So I'm going to go back to Ivan, and then we'll go back again to you. Don't worry, we're not done asking you hard questions yet. So.
Bad for Tony though, because Tony and we did a scrim a few weeks ago.
Yes,
and I guess their recruitment plan or whatever it is to choose their team works, so they whooped our ass pretty badly. So whatever they did worked on how they chose their players. They did pretty good.
No, but they were good games though, and I think that that was the scrim was really interesting because it does highlight oh, what about this list? I haven't thought about this combo. That's really interesting. Like it's useful to see what other metas and what people were playing as well. We did a bit of chatting about that, about team planning, didn't we, in terms of pairing and how you approach that and how you want to look at that for WTC, because that's a whole game within a game. Like we've got guys who just love doing the pairing stuff before you get to playing the 40k itself.
Yeah, for some the games aren't really relevant afterwards, are they? It's more
Yeah,
about
indeed.
setting them up.
Everything's won at pairings, right? That's how it works. Everything is just
Yeah,
Oh yeah,
exactly.
you're all playing Pokemon / Yu-Gi-Oh at pairings at that point, and then you're like, oh, and we have to wait for some games to happen. It doesn't just automatically win.
Yeah, the best
Oh.
stuff is that both teams usually walk away happy with the pairings.
Those are the great rounds when you go to where like the coaches go. So we both predict that we're going to get like 95. So it's
my
where that
favorite.
this is going to be somebody's going to mess it up in a round. Yeah.
Last year, every time, almost every single time, except for Luxembourg, their coach would make sad faces at me if we lost the pairings badly. Every other national team, though, every captain would look at me and be like, "Everything's great," and I was like, "That doesn't. You can't all have done great. That's not how this works. Somebody has to have messed up somewhere." But for Ivan, the question, I guess, first before we ask you, obviously you've had at least one kind of event together with a scrim against Team England, but what does the scene look like in Korea itself? Because it's not a scene that we hear about a lot, I think. And so it'd be good, I think, to hear a little bit more about it.
So unfortunately, Stu's not here to kind of talk about that. He's the main tournament organizer in Korea. And I know it's grown. So I've only visited a few times here and there for family and friends. And every time I've visited, the community seems to have gotten larger and larger every time I've visited. And I'm part of their chats for their competitive groups. And it looks like every time the membership is growing and growing. And I see their events on BCP. And I know Sue and several other TOs in that area are very good about organizing, even if it's a small event, and publicizing it and the results throughout every month. So it's a small community and it's growing. It's definitely not the size of some of the European or US size by any means, but it's growing enough where I think in a few years it'll catch on to like normal meta mainstream status. It'll probably take about 5 years to get there, but by that point, you know, there's going to be hopefully a solid stream of like solid players. And it seems like, unfortunately, like a lot of the main people that go are from either European or US based on their job. They go for a temporary time period, whether it's active duty military or just because they have like a teaching gig or something like that. And then they end up leaving. So some of that continuity gets lost, but hopefully the players that are still there, like the Koreans that are still there, kind of take that lessons learned and hopefully take that forward to the next players that come to the game in Korea.
Yeah, I think
So
most
do you
of
know
what I
if there are-
hear is about pun all the time, and tournaments arranged on pun and stuff like that from looking at numbers and hearing from people in Korea. That's about the extent of my knowledge and where it ended. But go ahead, Joker.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, Ivan, do you know if there are any team events in Korea and or do people tend to travel to other countries? And because you're the first guest representing a team from the Far East, so there's a lot of curiosity around this. What does Warhammer look like over there? Do you know? Did you get like a lot of chances to play when you were visiting family and friends?
No, so like to answer the question about teams, I haven't seen any team events there, nor have I seen any players really go out of their way outside of Korea to visit other countries and join team events. I think China had maybe 1 or 2 team events. I was also surprised to see Thailand, Singapore sending a team, which is awesome. But I haven't seen a lot of international East or Southeast Asia having a lot of team events, and it could speak to volumes of maybe the size of the community or them having the literal physical infrastructure to hold big team events like that. Just generally, it's very dense over there. So like buildings, it's hard to procure an area or reserve an area that could hold that many people. And usually you'll see just normal singles events that are up to like maybe 12, 16 players. And that's in like people's living rooms almost, right? So renting out spaces is generally expensive, at least in Korea. So it's hard to find team events like that. So most of the people that have gone to team events are those people who are living in Korea because of their job, or people visiting and have a team experience from some other country, but not so much in the Koreas.
And then you said you've played at least a scrimmage against Team England. Has Korea played against any other teams on TTS? Have there been other scrims and stuff like that as well?
Yeah, so as of right now, we're up to the 24th. We still have a scrim going on with Team Belgium. And really shout out to Team England and Team Belgium for even, like entertaining the idea of having a scrim against like a non-existent team first, but really appreciate all the help and love and support that these two teams have really given us, because we're learning a lot each and every rep, each and every game. And we do these, after action reviews we did with Tony, and we'll do one with Liam afterwards, but they really give us great insight into their thought process and methodology on how they pair. And that's really invaluable for a first country going into WTC. And it shows really the community as a whole just wants the whole community to get better, as a whole, which speaks volumes, honestly. So Belgium is really our second and last one. And that was an interesting time because the way we set up for those 2 weeks was right when lists were submitted. So it ended up being some people's lists were changing when the pairings were happening, just so we could get our scrim game in with our list that we submitted, rather than a list that didn't really make sense. So, but yeah, those are our two only ones on TTS.
Did you have any other forms of training, so to call it then? Did you play on TTS internally, like do lots of reps that way, or anything else?
Yeah, I think just like a lot of other countries, definitely TTS, especially since our players are sparsed out all over the place. If they had any singles events or team events, just try to go to those. Several of our team went to, ATC and some of the other Team Battle Brother big tournaments that are 5 or 8 man, just to practice the pairing process. And so they understand that a little better. And the mentality I told people was anytime you go to an event, it's okay that if you lose a game, not a big deal. But if you're going in with the mentality of scraping for every point and thinking of it like it was WTC and trying to get that 10-10 or that 9-11 or whatever it is, try to go in with that, because that'll help as we get to WTC to scrape for those points in the future. So don't really worry about, RTTs or GTs. If you're already going to those, you're going to have fun, do whatever you do. But for each game, go in with the mentality that even if I lose, I'm just going to lose small. Right? So that way, whatever list you go, you're flexible with that list and you go in with that team mindset. But the scrims, TTS, small RTTs, that's generally our prep. Yeah.
Yeah, that's definitely something that's worth mentioning. The shift of the mindset from playing singles to teams, where you have to keep track of not only your score, but also about the opponent's score and making it as little points as possible. Tony, what about Team England? Any events under the national flag that you've had?
We've actually, I might be getting in trouble because there's a few teams that wanted to scrim with us, and we said no, and we kind of post home nations. That was it. That's it, because we don't really do anything with any other teams after that point. Because we've got such a big community of people who've applied and people with the coaching group. We've always found that it's better just to go. I suppose not to be antisocial and withdraw and not talk to anybody, but I think if we can find some combinations or some cool list ideas, we don't necessarily want to go and take them. So, like, I know recently there was the Pyro event that had Poland, Ireland, the Netherlands here, and coming out of that, a lot of them, the teams have ended up taking the same Chaos list, taking the same Eldar list, taking the same Space Marine list, and you're like, well, that is really interesting for us, because we have a completely different approach. It's not that we don't want to practice. We have done TTS scrims. We've done TTS scrims against Ireland, Northern Ireland. We've done France. We've done some really useful ones so far. We had tried to find one time to do one against Poland. We just didn't get one done before kind of that deadline hit. Same with Iceland wanted to do one as well. So we've done our international events. We sent teams over to Pyro and to Home Nations to things. We sent a team to Alpine. The teams there. But once we get to post Home Nations, so kind of April, that's it. We shut our doors normally, and we don't normally play any of the games. And that is as much to give the faction specialists a chance to go, right, okay, I've got this faction, this one I'm running with. I'm starting to tweak this idea. And they can go and maybe, I suppose, still go to tournaments and still play events, but trying, I suppose, within our closed group, get as much practice as they want, come forward, okay, I want to test into World Eaters, I want to test into Space Marines, I want to test into Blood Angels, I want to test into whatever, go through that list of things and have that list kind of ironed out a month before. And then this year we had the exciting balanced data slate that threw everything up in the air anyway and killed half of our army choices. So a lot of that prep was kind of, I would say half of the team came out going, oh, my army's got better. And the other half are like, I need a new army. So that's been entertaining. And do you know what? And I don't think we had the mental space this year to do anything around just getting ourselves settled. And I'm sure, like, it's been funny, I suppose, reassuring as a captain to see people going on to the Discords and saying, oh yeah, we had our team 2 players changed army lists yesterday, and I'm like, yeah, we had similar stuff where it kind of in the last couple of weeks we had players not sure about a faction, testing 2 different factions, see what they could take. But I think it is really useful to get that practice. It's just where you put it in the year, and different teams have different ethos. I know Brian Seep, one of the guys from Team America, that played a lot, lives in the UK, played a lot over here, knows a lot of the guys here, and they were talking to one of our guys and saying that they find it really alien that we don't share ideas and have another team to bounce off. And I think we've always been that way as England. We kind of retreat a little bit at that point in the year, so we can kind of come up with our final 8. And whether or not we've got the right one or not, I don't know. We'll see.
Great. So
we talked a little bit. Go ahead, Joker. We all have questions. Go ahead.
Yeah, and our sync's a little bit off because of your crappy internet connection.
Look, it's not my fault that the hotel has crappy internet.
No, it's not. So how do you practice then? So it's just internal, like, games, any boot camps or anything like that after Home Nations?
Oh yeah, so we've done. We've got this weekend. We've got another boot camp where the entire team's at it over the 2 days. 2 weeks ago, we had another boot camp in London where 2/3 of the team was able to make it to that. We've got a different group of coaches coming in and around those days who can come in and play different games and bring armies with us as well. And we're pretty much on TTS every night. That's something that we have improved since last year. And I think last year we had players on armies even getting to the event going, oh, I could think I'd play this army like this, but I don't really know. And that is not where you're not going to win the WTC with that level of prep. And it was, we had, I think, good players on good lists, but they needed more reps with those lists. So we fixed that this year in that everybody is absolutely smashing out games on TTS, whether it is within our group. Some people that have been going and playing games, there's loads of places to get games on TTS just because it's nice to get a variety of opponent. And even with our group of kind of 16 to 20 people, you can find, I want to play a game against Dark Angels. Well, we've got this one guy who plays Dark Angels really well, and I've played him 5 times already. Just to get that different perspective or try that different flavor of list has been really useful. But at the moment, it's a mixture. And over the coming weeks, we've got a full practice weekend this weekend, and then another 1 or 2 days planned before we go, where different players are going to get together just to have certain combos. Because now the lists are out, we have made a list of, I would say, for each player, they've each got between 5 and 10 lists that they definitely have to play outside of the pod, plus within the pod lists where we have question marks around, well, actually, this is interesting. How does that list match up into us? How does that fare? So everybody's got about 15 plus games that they have to get played before we go, plus whatever we get to. So there's lots of 40k happening.
So I guess the answer to the question then, how do you adapt to the massive change from the data slate, is basically reps, more reps, and then some more reps.
Yeah, because I think it's not the data slate wasn't. If it had just been a points change and a couple of like army nerfs, like goodbye Green Tide, goodbye Bully Boys, that kind of thing, that's fine. But it's the points change and the core mission change, and then the map changes with WTC as well, to adapt to that. I think it's been such an upheaval, and the games, as I'm sure lots of players will say, and captains will say, the game now feels really open. There's no killer faction. Like last year it was Eldar, wasn't it? Where nobody had an answer for Eldar, and Eldar went out and got 20 points every round, and it was who you sacrifice to the Eldar gods. And this year is much more balanced, much more open, and you've seen such great a variety in comp. It makes it more interesting now in terms of the prep side to go right. We never considered a World Eaters list with 30 Terminators, or we never even considered World Eaters as a faction. We didn't like the Dark Angels as much as the Blood Angels that we've got, so we need to actually practice games into that. We haven't practiced that much. Some teams have got Space Wolves, which we didn't rate, so we have to see how that plays. Like, there's so much work we can do before the WTC. We could almost do with another month to practice and get reps in. And there are going to be some bits where you're going to get to the table and it won't have been repped. It won't have seen the playtime, and we're just going to have to go. I hope our players got the knowledge of their army that they can come out of the match the right way.
And Ivan, pretty much the same thing for Team Korea, just kind of going to churn reps in order to get prepared for kind of, well, now that lists are locked, there are no choices, only reps, I suppose.
That's exactly right. Just reps, see how many you get. And I think that'll really show when it comes to WTC, like Tony said, it's like a whole new game, essentially. So whoever has the most games and reps in to understand the nuances of every little change will honestly do the best. So, yeah.
And then I don't think Joker asked this the hardest question that I ever ask anybody. What are the names of all of the players who are going? First, Ivan, tell us the names of all the players who are going with Team Korea and kind of a little bit about each of them.
Yeah, and what factions are they playing now that the lists are semi-live? And so we know you've went through a bit of turmoil, but who made it in the end?
So our top 8, I'll start, I guess, with the I'll start with the East Coast players, or the U.S. players, including myself. So I'm playing World Eaters. This was a faction change, almost pretty much last minute. I was playing Guard, I think, when Tony and our teams did a scrim, but I had to change the World Eaters based on this most recent faction change, and our roles and our teams changed. So I had to kind of be flexible and pick up World Eaters as more of an aggro faction rather than a more attack faction like Astra Militarum. And then we have Michael Black, or I guess on the U.S. side. So Chris Koo is from Georgia, him and his brother both. So Minchol Kim and Chris Koo. Chris Koo is playing Grey Knights this time around. He's got the Dread Knight span with Canis Rex. He was a guy I met this previous February, pretty recently, him and his brother both at a Team Battle Brothers 5-man event. And I was like, it's pretty shocking whenever I see a Korean American playing Warhammer. I'm just like, what the heck? Is a critical capacity in this room for Asians in this room? I was like, we just met 4 of them, right? So I was like, dude, what's up, man? You heard of WTC? What are your thoughts? Let's get drinks. Let's talk about this. So he's a great dude. Lives in Atlanta, Georgia, with his brother, who's playing Death Guard at WTC, and he also, Chris, also had a faction change because of this recently. He was going to play World Eaters or Demons, but then because I chose World Eaters, he had to switch to Grey Knights. So that was a change because he was playing Chaos Knights when we scrimmed against England. So a lot of different faction changes there to kind of complement the rest of our team. We have Connor Lobb. He's for whoever is on the Discord for WTC model approvals, he's probably got some of the most entries because it's a Lizardman army for like Exodite Eldar, and that's like his go-to for like several years now. 5 years.
He's got like his model entry because he wasn't sure what he was taking pre-submission was like every single unit in the entire codex with a converted Lizardman thing. And it's like 100 photos, and you're like, fair play. That is like just covered all my bases. It's great.
Yeah,
I love.
And he knew there was going to be some problems for it, so he submitted super early on, like all the entries he could.
Here's every
including a
data
race
sheet.
night.
Yep.
Yeah.
You might as well just do every data sheet. Cover every
exactly.
base. Nobody can get mad if you've got proof for it.
This is it.
Yeah, you're doing it so much ahead of time. Like you don't know what's going to be good after the latest data slate, right?
Yeah,
Could be
absolutely.
flipped on upside down. So yeah, better safe than sorry.
Yeah, 100%. And he's a little nervous right now because it's coming close to the model approval deadline, so he's waiting back to hear back. So we'll see how that goes. Then we have Mike Sanchez. He's playing our sisters, also a great guy. he's also in the Virginia area and someone I've practiced and played with several times before, so a solid player. And then finally, we had Thomas Bird on the side of the world. He's from Pro Tabletop, loves his Ultramarines. That guy will die blue any chance he gets. And obviously a solid player and a great coach before he had to become player, since one of our national players had to drop last minute. So he filled in and was able to get like all the logistical stuff like carried out and without a hitch. So he came in real clutch. On the Korea side, we have Dan Doyle, who's playing Drukari. That's been his mainstay faction for the past year or so, and he's been really practicing against every rep. So he's generally our person as a faction specialist to know his matchups fairly well and see where he could come up, even if it is a loss, to at least a smaller loss. We have Mike Blackford. He had a quick faction change, but he's sticking to Thousand Suns now from Tau since his last scrim. And yeah, also a great player, and both of them who are living in Korea, really helping out with all our scrims, all our reps, and making sure that we're all within regulation of WTC, because the WTC player packet is not a small one. So they help with a lot of the administrative nuances and rules for that. So yeah, that's our 8 players it came down to. And it's been great. Like the first and foremost thing that I didn't mention when we went through players is when I interviewed every single person, because it's our first time going to WTC as a country, we wanted to make sure that the people that go represent not only the country well, but also just the player base as a country for, ethics and just being a good person all around. So that way we could get invited back, right? Because ultimately we could go and just be complete asses and no one would want us back. But we want to make sure that our opponents care that this country that's coming as a new, we want them to come back. And these players are not only solid players, but also great people. So I'm glad that as we went through the interview process, that they were continuously able to stay on through the main roster. And yeah.
Awesome. Then
Yeah,
Tony,
cool.
you get the same question, the hardest question. You did a really good job. You didn't forget or stumble on anybody's names, Ivan. And Tony is about to.
No, okay. So let's start with the easy one. This year, I've decided that I should play 40k again. So I am the first name on the team sheet this year, and I'm repping a very subtle Eldar list that has lots of Haywire Scourges, Fusion Blasters, and Ravagers. So if you can't figure out what that does in pairings, more for you. But it doesn't want the horde matchups, but it's there to be a bit of a brute force slap in the face for anybody who's driving a tank. We've already mentioned that we're bringing along Manny, who's brought, I think, well, it was either Dark Angel, Space Wolves, or Blood Angels were the 3 Marine choices, and I think he had free range of a few armies because he likes to have what you potentially call the decent prey list. So he's running the Blood Angels this year. He's loving them. He's been hobbying on them for about a month now, which is unheard of. So look forward to the semi-average paint job on those by the time they get there. Vic is funny. Vic has been playing the Thousand Suns for us. I had a go with that, but because full disclosure, I was playing the Green Tide, and obviously they've killed that, despite what America says in their roster. Green Tide is dead, and they so we pivoted around a bit, and Vic ended up back on the Thousand Suns, and he's like, I've been practicing this army for a year, because that's what he practiced last year for WTC. So they're both of those players came with us last year. Alex Harrison has now probably reached a point where he's almost one of the most experienced players in the England lineup. He spent most of the year practicing Space Marines, but pivoted because the Iron Storm basically just didn't work, did it? After that last change, a point hit on all the tanks would have probably killed it, but with all the rules changes, with some of the interactions that I was doing it to get the maximum out of the list, and certainly with the one tank gets affected by all the Iron Priest buffs, that just kills that list. Any hope of it being good. So he's on. He's gone from Iron Storm to a Votan Gunline. Wow, everybody! What a transition! He just loves little metal boxes. So then from last year, now last year's 2 new players that we had on top of those 4 were Chris Kinnear and Nassim, who has made himself infamous because he goes online and just gets himself in trouble. I mean, he's already the lists came out, and within half an hour, he's like, "I've got a tattoo bet that if this doesn't happen or I don't score more points, I'm getting a tattoo." And I'm like, dude, we've literally had the lists But what are you doing with yourself? But I mean, so but different players. So Nazim's had, oh God, he tried all sorts of different lists this year. But I have made him stick to guard. He has been desperate to switch for ages, but we've had a guard build in mind for a while that we think is a good list. So we've kept him on that, and he's not the only person to run that tech at the event, but we're happy with him running that. He's been doing that for a while. Chris ended up most of the year on Necrons really, but again we just feel that certainly with the melee pressure lists that are out there, Necrons of all types don't really like that. And I know that like the Canoptic rates for most of the year was everybody's tournament boogeyman because it was just 18 race running around being impossible to kill. But even I suppose after around Home Nations, we'd already veered away from that. We thought it was something that was predictable in a team setup, and we didn't want it to run that. And the Awakening and the Hypercrit builds give you something, but not so much. So Chris ended up on the Sisters, which the initial codex came out and they're bonkers, and I know the points change have hit them, but I still think there's a really cool tech in there. So both those players had good first years last year, but both of them had a list that didn't do what they wanted it to, and after list submission were disappointed in the choices they made and gone, oh, my list is too one-dimensional, or I missed out on this. So both of them, I think, have really doubled down on their practice and their refinement this year to make sure they've got something that really does what it says. And they're the kind of players that you don't need to tell now, that you need to practice and you need to know, because they've been there and got that wrong, or got that wrong but been disappointed in themselves, going, oh, I wish I'd done this differently. So that's great. And then on two new players, not new to 40k certainly, Chris Radford and Boris both play for Team Ignite. So within the UK, there's quite a few different team groups or factions that compete in like the team events that the UKTC, the UK tournament kind of event group runs, and Ignite is one of those. And that Ignite is an international team. They boast players from all sorts of different nations. So Yockel, Iceland captain, Mason from Team Poland, Brian, Vic, Boris, and Chris, and they all play. And Nazim's in it, for example, as another team. I just kind of impartially stay out as part of Team England, and I don't really step into that group, extra level of, I suppose, tribalism you have. It's almost like football clubs in that way. But both those guys are new to the team, but really experienced players. And they are two that really stood out with, when you mentioned about how do we pick the team, both of them traveled to international events and did, really sterling jobs and used different factions at different events. So showed their flexibility there. So they are both raring to go, really. I think they're both really excited about coming. It's a really interesting roster this year, but I think everybody is definitely a specialist in the faction they've ended up on now, which is great. And we're really happy with the balance of the lineup. So yeah, got through all 8 without stuttering. And it's not because I haven't went first. Well, maybe it's because I haven't went first, so I could go, just do it. I've got a whiteboard off screen here, just writing on. Yeah.
I figured I'd give you a slight advantage and give you an extra couple seconds to think it through.
I'm old now. Yeah, this is it. I need more time to collect my thoughts. I couldn't even get to the call on time, so there you go. Yeah, forgive me.
Oh man. Now I'm Joker. Do you have a question while I collect myself?
Yeah, I do. I've got a question for Ivan. So, have you managed to bring any coaches then, or any non-playing staff, or is it just 8 players?
We're just having 8 players go. Yeah.
All right. Well then, do you have like a target or an expectation from the event for this year?
Hopefully break top half. I mean, that seems like a okay goal to have. But if not, it's fine. As a first WTC experience, I think we all understand that there's going to be times where we're gonna get humbled and just learn a lot, and hopefully bring those experiences to next year and break seed next year. So, or at least do better than the previous years. So just keep on getting better is really our goal. And for this time, try not to set too high, lofty goals. Glad we're not in the same pot as US or Team England, but we have a tough pot also.
Oh, you learn so much at your first WTC. God, it is like that first time. My first one was in Serbia, and like that first time you step in the hall and It's amazing. Like it is so different to any tournament that I've been to. Everybody is so friendly. You will make friends. You will get friends who'll chat to you online now and play games. Now, especially nowadays, play games with you on TTS and go, come to this team event, come to this. And next year you'll want to go back because it'll be such a different experience then after you've been that first time. But it is amazing.
I will say, looking at your pod, you have like the nicest pod of people that has ever existed. You have like Iceland, Denmark, and Sweden are all just full of amazingly nice people. So that's like the best
good.
pod to get just from an experience standpoint.
That's true.
We're pumped. So it's going to be great.
Yeah. It'll be a blast. Same question, Tony. Kind of what are your target or expectations for this year as Team England?
Well, we had rounds last year where we just couldn't get ourselves over the line, and it was there's always somebody who has some bad luck and some things go wrong in games. It's a game of dice and toy soldiers, but like we felt that more often than not, where we didn't get the results we wanted and it was a loss or it was a draw, we just couldn't get there. It was just because we were looking at our matrix and our score predictions weren't right, and players weren't able to then deliver things that they said they could. So we've really worked on that. And this year we won a podium. We always say that whenever I come on something in the past 10 years of doing this now, it's what do you want to do? We'd love to get top 3. But I think to be in the position a couple of times against teams that went on to podium and not get a result against them, and then eventually end up against Poland, knowing that even if we beat Poland, we needed other people to do certain things to win the event. We just want to have it in our own hands. Like we think this sounds very big-headed, doesn't it? But we do think we're good enough. I'm really lucky to have been able to have actually won a WTC in my time playing, and I'd love to do it again. It's my first year officially as captain this year, so I'd love to go back and actually take us back to the winning ways in that regard. And we were really close last year, even with all the things that I've mentioned where we can go. People weren't happy with army lists, or with things we realised the prep wasn't perfect. We still came really close because we do have the basics down. So I think we've been just doubling down and making sure that we've got the basics. Let's make sure everything else around it is great as well. We're bringing a big coaching team this year. There's as many coaches as players. Not who they're not going to be sitting around having a beer. Most of them, they've got jobs in terms of.
They need to be bringing beers to the players, not just
the one.
sipping
Thank you
them
very
on
much.
the round.
Yeah, but it is simple things like WTC is very busy. Like you get some rounds will start late or run over, or your round might just your game, for example, live might just run right to that time at the end because that's just how it is. Not because your opponent's awkward or slow, just because that's how the game goes. And then you go like, oh, we've got an hour and a half to do the next round matrix because we need to get that prepped if it's not one of the pod games, and we need to have some food, and I need to have some break, and I want to speak to my partner, or go to the toilet for 5 minutes, or whatever it needs to be. Just sometimes just decompress after a close game. So having some coaches who can set the terrain up for you, bring drinks, and that is a big thing that we do. Well, whenever we play a WTC round with our coaches, I was in charge of that last year, and I got a couple of months in the WTC team on it, and I'm got a head coach this year, Jack DF, who's going to be managing that for us. Our coaches are there for both teams. So if we end up playing you guys, our coaches will bring you guys water. They'll set the terrain up for both teams at the start of the round. They're there to make it easy for everybody, and they're just not there to get in the way. And I think that is the point of being the coaching team. And we want our players who are potential players who have come along as coaches to see what the event is like really up close, to see how our players who've been before play the games, how their opponents expect the games to be. There's always going to be some disputes. There are every year. So see how that's resolved, how you get the refs, how you get involved. And, it is a learning experience on that side as well. So we would just love to improve on our position. I mean, 2 years ago, we came 5th. We came 5th only because we won our very last round, and we were going to, otherwise we've been outside of the top 10. The last year, we came 5th. But we came 5th after being in it, playing the top team who went on to win the event last round. So we don't feel there's any shame in losing to Poland ever. Do you know what I mean? They're one of them, probably the most decorated WTC team that there is. They're looking really strong this year. If we lose to them, we lose to them. Beat them, fantastic. But we'd love to just be in it again, and I think that I'd love really to have that in our hands this time. And I think, like I said, so some areas around prep and how we get there, we've hopefully ironed out this time. And I'm really pleased that I suppose, like most captains, I'm really pleased that all that list doc came out. We didn't miss anything. There wasn't an army who went, "Oh my God, we haven't taken Dark Angels. What have we done?" Like, because that is the worry, isn't it? Especially because we don't go outside of our team setup once we get to past April. We do have that worry. Have we missed some cool idea? What's the nickname that's going around for it? Is it the Magical Chaos Knights? Is that kind of Mutilated Vortex Beast, Magnus, and Thousand Suns build? We're not running that, but that's a cool list. I'd say probably we would never have come with that in a million years. That's just not the kind of the player style that we have. But yeah, if we can get top 3, that'd be fantastic.
All right. I get to stir the pot a little bit now, which is my favorite thing to do. So
is it your comedy relief question?
No, the first one is not. The second one will be the comedy relief question, and then we'll see where we go.
Okay.
It's not the comedy relief question. Both of them are pot stirring questions. The first one is, Ivan, what is a team that you want to call out to play against this year? Either like who do you want to just kind of grudge, kind of throw the gauntlet at?
Yeah, and randomly shit talk about them.
Yes, and you can randomly shit talk them. You are welcome to throw as much shade at them as you want.
As a first time WTC go, can I like take the political route and opt out of this question just in case it bites me in the ass? Oh man.
Not.
I mean, the guys in your pod are planning to get you drunk, and just to see you guys.
I know, that's the tough one.
Just so you know.
Oh man. It would be cool, honestly, to play any of it's so hard. I would love to play any country, honestly. And I know that's a cop-out answer, but going for the first time, it's like any new team is like a new experience, right? So even getting a rematch against England or a rematch against Belgium, playing Poland, whatever it is, I think for us, we're just like, let's just play some games and get those reps. So the follow round 2 through 7 is still great games and continuously. I don't know if I could just call out one team. I'm going to stick to that one.
All right. I'll accept it for now.
Only because you're participating for the first time, though.
Tony doesn't get to bow out of this question.
Oh no, I don't. I don't get to bow out of that one.
Surely there's a grudge match in the pod, right? You've got Ireland who beat you at home nations, I believe. So like.
I know, but Ireland beat the team we sent to Home Nations, but then they also beat Belgium, which allowed us to win the Home Nations event. So shout out to Ireland, keep making it happen, because that was an interesting event. No, I think Ireland's actually an interesting one in my pod. That I know that they're really well prepped this year. When we did a scrim with them earlier in the year, and I chatted with their captain and vice captain about kind of the team prep and the stuff you do and how you recruit, and because their 40k scene's growing and they're trying to push their team to get to up into the higher seeds, WTC, which is what everybody's goal is each year. We want the big boys. We don't want to shy away from it. We want America. I want a Nick Nanavati game. I've never actually played Nick Nanavati, but I've had the mother bleeper on my team, so I definitely need a game into him. There's also what should we call it? Sean Naden's ridiculous elbow list needs to be put in the dirt. So yeah, but we need to play those guys again. I mean, the Aussies beat us last time out after letting us win it graciously a couple of years ago, so we need to put them back down a peg as well.
Poland, no, thank you.
Poland. Yeah, that's I've got a win one. I've got an alternating win-loss routine with Poland. So we lost last year. So but we always end up playing France. We always have a great round against them, so I can't grudge them. That's always just how it is. But certainly, yeah, the big boys, because we think we've got the right team.
Okay, good stuff. Right, so Nathan is still with us for a moment more.
He had his internet delivered to his room. There we go.
Actually,
Yeah.
that was actually housekeeping trying to bust into my room, which is fine. But I had to be like, please, I need to finish filming or doing my nerd podcast with my nerd friends on nerd thing.
Yeah.
All right, the second
Half
question
expecting you to
is a
get up
little
with
bit
no
more
pants
fun. I knew that I was wearing pants. I purposefully put them on in case I needed to stand up in front of the camera.
You just crop that image as it goes out. There we go.
It's true. That would have been funnier. All right. The second question is the one that I've decided this year. Last year was bird combat. This year, it's a fight between national dishes. So I'm using Google to do all of this.
Oh,
So
God.
if I pick the wrong national dish, it's not my fault. It's Google's fault. And this time I'll start with England. Your national dish is apparently chicken tikka masala, according to Google.
That's colonialism at its finest, isn't it? Really. There we go. So yeah, go on then.
Why don't you explain what chicken tikka masala is, and then how you would rank it against other national dishes? Or do you think Google is wrong and it should be something entirely different?
I think it's probably everybody's favorite. Like, chicken tikka masala is a particular curry dish you can get in Indian takeaway essentially in the UK. I wouldn't say that was our national dish. I'd say something like fish and chips or something like that would have been like the stand. Do you know what I mean? That would be. I'm going to call Google out on that one. Because fish and chips, I would say, would stand strong against some things. Because whatever Ivan's going to get is going to far beat chicken tikka masala, which is kind of a creamy, mildish curry. No, that's not I reckon anybody. I'm not impressed with that, Google. I'm not impressed with it at all. Not having it.
That's also fair.
Even
Where would
Google's
you then
throwing
rate?
shade on England?
Oh, that's fair. Yeah, only
So
good food.
So hold on a second. What's your number one currently? What's your number one national dish?
Right now, it's definitely South Africa's like barbecue approach, which was like more of an affair than just a national dish, really. So I'm giving it to them right now.
It was a whole thing, not just the food.
I mean, you see, it's a fish and chips on a cold, wet night in England, eating out of the paper. Do you know what I mean? With salt and vinegar, it's just like it's a thing that you do, and you go, oh, "That's great!" Like if you haven't been here and done that, I can't really conjure it. But certainly, if I could go from there to a South African barbecue, I'm like, yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, let's go.
I was more going to ask: is there ever not a cold, rainy night in England? That feels like
are we bringing the? Can he do it on a cold, rainy Tuesday evening in Stoke into Warhammer?
Yeah, I think we'll say we're middle of the table. Middle of the pack is where I put us.
I'll accept it. And then, I don't know, Google is great at a lot of things, but not at picking national dishes. It says that the Korean national dish is kimchi, but Ivan's also busy with children. So
Ivan's decided he hates that so much he's leaving. He's like, he's out. He's gone.
He is so offended by Google's answer that
it's funny because kimchi is like not really. It's like not really it's like a side dish, right? It's just like a complimentary like side dish. So it's interesting they put that. I mean, I guess ranking it's not even an entree, so you can't even rank it. It's fish and chips is better than kimchi if you put it that way in terms of size, and but kimchi is a staple in Korean culture. So beat that.
What would you pick then if you had to pick a national dish for Korea? I'm gonna put you on the spot. You get to pick one.
Oh man. Yeah, so there's a couple main dishes. One, obviously, Korean barbecue is a big one. Different types of marinade.
All these barbecue nations.
Rib.
This is outrageous.
Yeah. There's also different broths.
Covers too much. It's crazy.
Different broths. I mean, like there's like bean sprout broth, kimchi broth is always great. Like kimchi soup. So those are solid on the list.
I won't lie. Korean barbecue does definitely sound better than fish and chips on a cold, rainy night.
I know, but he did come around to kimchi broth at the end, so I think he's contradicted himself, and I'm going to take the round win. There we go. Technicality. Thank you very much.
Fish and chips has been my go-to.
You don't get to
dish every
captain in
time.
Z1 by letting these things slide. You've got to seize these moments.
I'm more loving that everybody's just like, your dish is good, your dish is good too, and then just shaking hands across. This is perfect.
Yeah.
Some amazing displays of
You know what? I'm
togetherness.
going to change my grudge match. I just want to go against Tony now.
I'll bring you a cold, slightly soggy fish and chips, and you can bring me a Korean barbecue. That's amazing. Yeah, let's do it.
That doesn't sound like a fair trade, even slightly.
No. We already know who will be the winner in this one then.
And on that note, I am going to run away. So thank you both for participating in this interview and dealing with that. I hope you both have a
Bye,
wonderful
Nathan.
day. Bye, Joker. Bye, Tony. Bye, Ivan.
Bye, guys.
See you, Nathan.
Right, I'm gonna keep you guys for a moment, if you're willing to. So
Yeah, sure.
I've got two more questions, I guess. What do you think of the recent changes in the band's data state, new mission pack, etc., etc.? Do you like them? You think they're good for the game?
Personally, I think they're great. I think they've addressed a lot of the issues that, you know what, nobody enjoyed in the last version of the Prime Nexus, was it, Leviathan, where it was like, oh look, everybody's playing the same fixed secondaries, and you can't play this army because it just bleeds this secondary, and it has made things like a Tau Gunline or Chaos Knights more viable because you don't just need to bring it down. You can run a list with loads of characters, and Assassinate isn't always a definite because now there's another. You can't just cleanse and deploy teleport homers and get, oh, I'm going to get 90 odd points every round. Because I think if we play WTC with that, you just have loads of teams that go, cool, I'll just be able to do the secondaries. You can never stop me because certain armies can outskill you, outmove you, just at a base army level in terms of matchups. So I think they've done a really good job there. And I think that generally there's no, as I mentioned before, there's no one broken army. There are lists that are really good in team setups, but in like a singles play, there's no Eldar where you can run a Wraith Knight or an Avatar or an Incarn or all of them or a Wraith God Brick, and it just, no matter what you run, it beats everybody. There isn't a list that does that now. So I think they've nailed it. I think they've done a really good job of taking things and making them, if they are obnoxious, just turning them down, but making them playable still. So there's no real losers, although my favorite faction in the game, Gene Stealer Cult, I mean, that book is just, it feels like it was nerfed before it was released, so they can then so that they can build it up slowly to a point where it's competitive but not too broken. Does that make sense? Like I think when they did Gene Stealer Cult initially in the edition, it was too good, wasn't it? It was too many people didn't have an answer for it, and it made games really one-sided. That's a book though where it's a bit like Custodes when it first came out, felt underpowered. Like it's taken a balanced data slate or two and mission changes to make Custodes better, to give the cult some options to play into, maybe. So we'll see down the line. But I think that, what things they've done with Dark Eldar to completely change their faction and give them a whole new detachment, changes to things like AdMech to completely change their army core rule. Those are great for the game. It just shows that the playtesters and the playtesting team are invested with what actually makes the game fun for those people who own those armies. And then the wider missions, I think, are great. There'll still be some things that need changing. I still think secret missions are possibly, with certain armies, really easy to achieve, and that can be really difficult. And in teams, I'm sure you're going to see over the week at WTC, some teams will have brought lists that can beat you or draw with you because they've got that secret mission you just can't stop. Whether it's going to be a Justice at the end, or it's going to be a warlord that teleports around, like there's loads of ways to do it. So I'm pleased with the game at the moment. There's so much variety in army lists at WTC. I think that's a really good sign. I'll be interested to see where they go next.
Right, and Ivan, what do you think?
Keep it short. Yeah, that's exactly right. Ditto everything Tony said. I think it's in a great spot. Yeah, it's interesting seeing the missions and how they kind of all play out. And with the secret missions, it's kind of nice that you still have ability to come back and at least tie, if not have a small win or small loss from behind, which is awesome. I like that they brought actions back. I gotta say, the one thing that's kind of peeved me is like how much aircraft suck. Like, I was a big Eldar plane player, like 9 planes, and I want those guys back
Yes,
at some
yes,
point.
Ivan. Oh, we are brothers. There we go. That was my favorite list I ever ran. There we go.
This is nonsense.
Yeah,
This
I
is
want
Yeah.
those
nonsense
back.
thing.
Yeah, but that's the classic
God,
point, isn't
no,
it?
not
They don't
that.
know how
Or
to make.
obnoxious NOLA shooting. Just
They've never
no.
learned how to make planes good, right? They can either make them broken or rubbish, but never
Yeah,
in
that's
between.
true.
Never just okay. I don't know why they can't get it right, but there we go.
It is what it is, unfortunately. Right, and last question that I've got for you guys. Let's start with England then. Are you forbidding your players to play the War Masters, or there's like no incent, or like there's a do what you do,
Oh no!
or
If some of the guys thought about it, and I said, look, if you want to go, you can, and it's generally really well run, and we saw like good players could do it. But you're already playing a lot of games, and you're playing like we. I don't know how other top teams do it, but I had a little glimpse because like on one of the, I think it was when I got there Wednesday last year, and obviously I was coaching, and the first game was on Thursday night, and we were sitting like the main square in Mechelen, and we had a couple of the American guys with us, and they left to go do a team meeting to do the like matrix plan for the first day, and that kind of epitomizes where I think if you're playing WTC properly, to go and try and improve your team's placement, whatever your seed you're in, whatever your goal is for the event, you're gonna have to go, and probably not for the pods as much, but certainly for the games outside of pod, you have to go in the evening and you have to prep both who you think you're playing in the morning and who you potentially think you're going to play after that. And you have to at least try and have colours of every matrix, and you have to go with each player and check their mission and check that it. Do you know what I mean? It takes time. WTC days are long. I like that it's Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday now. I didn't used to like that, but actually the way it works gives you space to go in the evenings because you finish late. You finish at 8:30, 9 o'clock. You have to get back into the main town centre. You might want to shower after a long sweaty day playing 40k in that hall. You've got to have something to eat. Then you probably, if you do it properly and spend that time talking as a team and practicing pairings and all that, you can easily be up till midnight, 1 in the morning, and then you're up early to get back over there and trudge over with all your stuff. It's long days. So if my guys want to go and potentially go and play every single round in the War Master, on top of that, that's absolutely fine. But I just think that the event itself it's great and it's fun, and I do love it when I'm there, and it is all consuming, but it's a lot. And I think that for their own sanity, they'll enjoy it more. So a lot of us are traveling over on Tuesday this year, and we're going to do our kind of traditional. Everybody's allowed to get drunk one night. That's it on the Tuesday, and then recover on the Wednesday, and then Thursday we're there ready for game one. That's the rough plan we've got this year. So we have got coaches though who are going to go into War Master, and they're really excited to do that. But I if they wanted to do it, players had the option. But I think they're all listens to other people who've tried it or done it or said, just give it a swerve.
All right. Sounds good. Ivan, what about you guys? I mean, you're traveling a long time. You're presumably going to be there earlier to like not have jet lag during the event. So is anyone playing War Masters, or is that like maybe too much of an issue on the financial side?
So there's actually a few, I think 3 of the guys are going to play War Master, like Dan, Mike, and or both Mikes.
Mhm.
Because they just essentially want to get reps with the list that they're playing with at WTC. So they didn't really change their list for that, and that way they could just get 6 or 7 new opponents and try out that before they go. And I told them it was a little optimistic. They're gonna be exhausted by the end of it, and I was like, as long as it doesn't affect your WTC like team event performance, like by all means, and don't like feel free to drop around if you have to, just to take a breather. But I was like, it's gonna be long days, and it's gonna suck if you either don't wake up on time or have an issue for the team event because you're drained mentally. So just be prepared. I was like, but I understand it's your first time going to WTC, in some cases, sometime first time going to Europe. So take advantage of it.
Oh,
And if
that
you
must
want to
add
play,
so
play.
much. See, that adds so much more excitement to it. I'm sure that energy burst will get him over the line when it is that first WTC round and when it is the War Masters as well. So My guys are all jaded and world weary and eating fish and chips on a cold, rainy night, so they definitely don't have the same energy for it all.
All right. Geez, I know. Crayfish and chips.
Sorry, I got a kid here who just came out of the bath.
No worries, man. Mine are all asleep.
Yeah. All right. Well, we're going to wrap up either way. So this has been a wonderful chat. Thanks, Tony of Team England, and thank you to Ivan of Team South Korea. It was a pleasure to have you guys on chat. As always, if you like what we do, please like, subscribe, etc., etc. Consider becoming a patron as well. And a massive thank you to our sponsors, the Army Painter and Weyland-Yutani. We're signing off for now, and we'll see each other in Mechelen in, well, what's less than a month now.
Awesome.
Bye-bye.
Appreciate it.
Bye,
Thanks.
guys.